hardcore MAGA supporter, and he got kicked off YouTube, and now he's been out here just twerking for everybody. He don't care. He just oil up his, and he'll go over and twerk for white supremacists. He'll twerk for anybody to get a few coins. He's doing corn now. He's either clapping cheeks or he's getting his own.
He walked in ready to speak, but no one would let him. What happens next is shocking, and you won't believe the chaos that unfolded.
Content creator, and I feel like as a black content creator, at least my point of view, if you're going to talk about the black community, good or bad, you should be defending your position in your community amongst other creators in your community. I've always took that stance. Very rarely will I work with somebody who's not black, okay? But Tommy and people like him, they like going out to these other communities, and then when they get there, they're not that big in those communities. They get shunned and they get treated real bad, all right? So he's probably right with what happened here, because I've seen this happen to Myron. I've seen this happen to a whole bunch.
Following the conversation was like trying to catch smoke. Everyone was talking at once, and it was hard to follow the back and forth. I wanted to make sure I said something, so here I am, appreciating you all for letting me speak. By the way, who exactly was getting frustrated during the discussion? Mayan, before closing out the space. I've been up for about half an hour, so I'll speak briefly as Tommy. Wait, hold on. Who is it again? Myron? No, Mayan. He was reacting to Max Prime joining the space. For context, the guy in the spotlight here is Tommy Sotomayor. In the conversation, it looked like Mayan was debating with some white supremacists while Tommy struggled to get his points across. If you're unfamiliar, Tommy Sotomayor first gained attention as a YouTuber and later on OnlyFans. Back in the early to mid-2010s, he discussed issues in the black community, men's rights, and tensions with black women. Over time, his focus shifted. He distanced himself from the black community and embraced a more hardcore MAGA ideology, which eventually got him banned from YouTube. These days, he's gone in a completely different direction. He's essentially monetizing everything, twerking online for anyone willing to pay, white supremacists, random viewers, it doesn't matter. He's gone from debating community issues to performing adult content for income. Despite this shift, he still engages in struggle debates with extremist groups, but they rarely let him speak. Yesterday, he had a similar experience with someone named Nick. The debate became so aggressive and chaotic that Nick eventually left the space entirely. This back and forth makes it exhausting just to follow what's happening. Honestly, for much of the last 30 to 40 minutes, I wasn't fully paying attention. I was tweeting and handling other distractions. But even so, the tension was clear. Tommy repeatedly got cut off when trying to defend himself. While others had extended opportunities to make their points, Tommy was denied the same courtesy. Things escalated to the point where, after being called a name, his co-host Ian accused him of weaponizing color, paraphrased. In short, it was a chaotic mix of heated debates, personal attacks, and interrupted dialogues, all highlighting just how difficult it can be to engage constructively in these spaces. During the conversation, someone labeled me a race hustler, and that's when I realized no one was holding them accountable. No one asked, "What exactly do you mean? Who are you accusing? And what's the proof?" Every time I tried to respond to a claim, I was immediately shut down with, "That has nothing to do with anything." This wasn't new. It reminded me of the chaos during the Greg Adams and Andrew Wilson debate. I've noticed a pattern where some black creators venture into spaces they arguably shouldn't, only to get dismissed or disrespected. As a black content creator, I've always believed that if you're going to critique or discuss the black community, positively or negatively, it's essential to engage with your own community first. You defend your ideas among peers who understand the context. That's been my stance. Rarely do I collaborate outside my community. But figures like Tommy Sotomayor seem drawn to other communities, only to find themselves marginalized there. When that happens, they often face harsh treatment, and this situation was no exception. What Tommy experienced is predictable because I've seen it with Mayan and other black creators. The audience favors those who already belong. In the discussion, I even tried to hand over the floor to Tommy so he could speak, but things quickly devolved into personal insults. Ian acted as if Tommy were his close friend and felt the need to defend every point, while no one acknowledged my arguments. They misrepresented me, suggesting I was asking for reparations or blaming white people, none of which happened. For example, when Arthur tried to link my words about Jews to a broader Black entitlement narrative, it was a clear distortion. I never claimed Blacks were owed anything. The pattern is clear. In spaces dominated by white validation, Black voices are often devalued. This isn't isolated. The same thing happened when I appeared on the Truth Teller show, mocked and called names for simply being there. Tommy, in particular, had everything he needed within the Black community, yet he sought acceptance elsewhere. When he went into a predominantly white space, he was devalued again. Now, upset, he expects apologies, validation, and recognition. Essentially, he wants acknowledgement. We love you, Black Tommy. We accept you. But reality doesn't work that way. Going outside one's community doesn't guarantee respect, especially when the audience has no vested interest in uplifting you. In the end, this situation illustrates a larger truth. Undervaluing your own community while seeking external validation almost always leads to disappointment. Tommy's frustration wasn't just about the conversation. It's about the disconnect between what he wanted and what the other community was willing to give. When the frustration hits, it's hard not to notice the low-level thinking in some Black spaces. How can you try to build a connection with people who refuse to hear you? They dominate the conversation for 35 straight minutes, but when you speak, suddenly there are excuses, interruptions, and dismissals. I answered every question thrown at me, yet it still didn't feel like there was any genuine desire for an alliance. An alliance, by definition, should be mutual. It shouldn't be about one side demanding obedience while ignoring the other's perspective. Yet, that's exactly what happened. They expected me to simply listen while they dictated the terms. That's not partnership, it's control. And this is why many Black men who lean toward extreme positions like myself, someone who votes Republican, steer clear of these spaces. Seeking acceptance among people who harbor bias against you often leads to one inevitable conclusion: you'll be devalued no matter what.
Okay, so the guy is saying it's hard to have a discussion with somebody emotionally charged. Now, Tommy must have been right. I'll give Tommy his flowers. Tommy's a talented commentator. He's a talented debater. So the points that Tommy was bringing forth, they had no way of dealing with those or dealing with this framework. So the reason why I know that he must have been right, although this is a truncated video, was the response that this guy just gave. The response he gave was, well, I can't make an alliance because look at you're emotionally charged. None of them dealt with what he was talking about. And instead of Tommy, which you're about to find out, he's about to act real emotional about this. He should have just have the guy address his framework. And the way he was supposed to do that was, listen, nobody's emotionally charged. Can you address what I'm talking about? And he would have forced him to cover that territory or cover that ground, which he did not. And again, this is what happens when you're in spaces that you're not supposed to be in, because you're looking for a moral victory that you're not going to get. The referees are not Blacks in this case, right? You're in a white space, it seems, and they're moving a goalpost. So watch what.
Now, to be fair, I've had white mentors and allies who genuinely supported me. Dr. Patrick Brown at UC Berkeley Extension and some immunology professors during undergrad changed my trajectory. But those experiences are the exception. The broader truth is that striving for parity or validation from people who fundamentally don't want equality is a trap. The very people you hope to align with may only engage because they see parts of themselves in you, but ultimately, they still see you as other. This distorted idea of an alliance, where one side talks and the other simply listens, mirrors historic patterns in America, from slavery to Jim Crow. Tommy attempted to discuss this truth, but was quickly shut down, warned not to frame Black people in certain ways, and reminded to speak politely. Meanwhile, others repeated points mindlessly and faced no interruption. The double standard was glaring. You can't form real connections if the other side refuses to truly know you, if they won't listen, misrepresent your words, or force you to defend against lies rather than engage in honest dialogue. Respect is foundational, but it was absent here. Watching this unfold is painful, especially for Black viewers witnessing yet another familiar dynamic, their voices marginalized and mischaracterized. Some criticized Tommy for being emotionally charged, as though his passion undermined his arguments. Yet the reality is that emotions often accompany truth when discussing race. The other side refused to grapple with his framework, instead using emotional labeling as a deflection. This was the moment where his commentary shined. He presented a coherent framework, yet it went unaddressed. Instead of engaging with his points, they dismissed him as reactive, a classic tactic to avoid confronting uncomfortable truths. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. Meaningful alliances require mutual listening, respect, and a willingness to engage honestly. Without that, all attempts at collaboration become performative, shallow, and inevitably frustrating. Tommy's insights, though contested, highlighted exactly this failure in real time. If someone had just addressed what I was saying, forced the conversation to cover the actual points, this whole situation could have been different. But that didn't happen. And this is what happens when you step into spaces you weren't meant to occupy, hoping for a moral victory that won't come. The referees weren't Black, the environment wasn't built for fairness, and the rules kept shifting. Ian brought up his point first, and I responded, but suddenly I'm emotionally charged, and that's used as a weapon against me. This is exactly why people get dismissed or even attacked in these spaces. The moment you bring passion and truth, it's framed as weakness. Meanwhile, my arguments, well thought out and grounded, are ignored, and attention is drawn to my tone instead of the content. Tommy, like many before him, finds himself caught in this dynamic. He enters spaces dominated by people who don't value him, and when he seeks validation, it's denied. He's angry at the outcome, but that anger is rooted in the very real disrespect and misrepresentation he experiences. The same people who claim to want dialogue interrupt, insult, or mute him, yet expect an alliance. An alliance cannot exist when one side refuses to listen and actively undermines the other. For example, Ian raised the issue of media representation and Jews promoting interracial pairings on TV. I responded logically, noting the imbalance. Black men are rarely paired with white women, yet white men with Black women are shown frequently. That's a valid critique of bias and media framing, but instead of addressing the substance, they dismissed the point and labeled me as emotional. Nothing about the argument was engaged with. This isn't personal, it's systemic. Black creators like Tommy or myself often face this pattern, entering spaces outside our communities, trying to engage meaningfully, and instead being silenced or belittled. Respect isn't just handed out, it's earned by listening and engaging in good faith. Unfortunately, in these contexts, that respect is rarely granted. Even when the discussion becomes petty or chaotic, it underscores a deeper truth. Without genuine listening and acknowledgement, conversations turn into dominance contests, emotional skirmishes, or performative debates. Tommy's frustrations aren't irrational. They're symptomatic of a broader reality where validation is conditional and truth is often buried under interruptions and insults. Ultimately, the lesson is clear. If the space isn't structured for fairness, if your voice is constantly muted, and if the other side prioritizes control over dialogue, the only way to maintain dignity is to stand firm, demand respect, and recognize that some victories, especially moral ones, simply won't come in those spaces. And then comes the ridiculous part. You see the frustration, the petty theatrics. Shut up, man, you want to say. Watching someone act out, twerking and flailing, all while complaining about mistreatment, is surreal. It's almost comical, cheeks bouncing, emotions spilling over, all in front of a live audience. And the irony is thick. The same person who spent years critiquing Black people for behaving this way suddenly transforms into exactly what they used to criticize when placed in a white-dominated space. Of course, no one wants an alliance with someone acting out in that way. Working with white supremacists or even moderates is fundamentally limited. You can only have one real conversation with them: separation. Extreme pro-Black or pro-white stances aren't compatible. Any attempt at unity beyond basic courtesy is futile. The only sensible approach is clearly defining boundaries. Wave across the state line if you want, exchange pleasantries, and then retreat. Respectful distance is the only workable strategy. Debating or negotiating with people who fundamentally oppose your existence accomplishes nothing. For those of us committed to uplifting our communities, separation isn't just a tactic, it's a necessity. Live your life where your people are. Build your wealth, your families, your legacy, without worrying about interference from those who don't value you. The white supremacist or overly hostile ally doesn't get to touch that space. They don't get your neighborhood, your children, your lineage. None of it. At the end of the day, Tommy's frustration, his public display of emotion, is another lesson in this reality. Acting out in a space where you're undervalued, misrepresented, and ignored only highlights the futility of seeking validation from those who fundamentally won't give it. True power comes from focusing on your own community and protecting what belongs to you. And there it is, another L for Tommy. Take notes, learn the lesson, and keep your eyes on the prize. Build where you belong, separate from where you don't, and leave the rest behind.